All right, Jared Hazen, welcome to the Single Track Podcast.
Hey Finn, thanks for having me. Excited to chat today.
I know that we're definitely going to spend a fair bit of time talking about your recent performance at Canyons last weekend and the build up to Western States and expectations there. There are a lot of background questions I want to ask about you, though. And I think I should say, first off, before we get started, as a fan of the sport, I think I speak for a lot of folks when I say we're all really stoked you're going to be on the start line this year for Western. It just adds that much more excitement and depth at the front of the men's field. And I got to imagine you feel the same way. What are your current thoughts right now?
Yeah, I was excited to get back. It'll be my, I guess, fifth time running Western States. Three finishes and one DNF. So my DNF coming last year, which resulted in me not getting an automatic spot back into the race. So yeah, I had to get a golden ticket this year and kind of did it last minute at Canyons, but I was excited to get it done and get to look forward to heading back.
I have a co-host who does certain episodes with me, and he did the Canyons 100K preview, Brett Hornig. And I was texting with him back and forth before this episode, and he said Jared is in the second phase of his Hall of Fame career right now, in the same way that like Tom Brady had a couple different eras on the football field.
Yeah.
He says that this 2022 is the start of your second Hall of Fame career in the sport. So one question I have there on the Western States front, you've now done it a couple times. You've had a lot of success, a couple podium finishes. Do you still find ways to get excited about the race? Like, what's your current why for that race? Is it like, I'm not going to stop until I win or get a course record? What is it?
Yeah. I mean, I think under certain circumstances, I'd probably stop without getting either of those. But my current motivation is to win Western States, and that kind of idea or like dream started in 2015, probably when I finished third at the race, and that was kind of back in my early days. I think I was 20 years old, um, and it was kind of a breakout like performance for me, and just opened my eyes to really believe in myself and think that maybe one day I could win this race, which in my mind was like the greatest ultra to win, and like definitely still is. I don't wouldn't necessarily argue that it's the most competitive like greatest ultra out there. UTMB probably takes the cake for that, but like as far as personally to me, getting my start in ultra running at Western States and having a history there, like it still means a lot.
You just mentioned it earlier. You're partly famous for getting into the sport really, really young, like right off the bat after high school, and obviously having a lot of success right off the bat too. And I think from my perspective, what impresses me the most is the way you did it. You seem to know exactly what you wanted and you had the confidence to go follow it. Like, I think you took a break from college for a bit. Like, you went straight from high school into the sport, and it's really interesting. Like, I'm just curious, what was your mindset back then? What gave you, I'll use the word courage, to just give it a try, like go all in on it that early in life?
Yeah, I mean, my motivation at the time was just that like I was really interested in ultra running and trail running, and it was like what I really like to do. So I didn't exactly have like you know big dreams of becoming like a professional runner or like uh, winning certain races or like getting to the top of the sport by any means. But that kind of came over time. But yeah, initially like I got into ultra running in high school. And I was running these trails in a state park in my hometown of Titusville, Pennsylvania. And there's a race there called the Oil Creek 100. And like as soon as I was running on those trails and had heard about this 100-mile race, I was like pretty fascinated. I was like, that seems kind of crazy that people run like 100 miles out here at a time. And like that definitely like drew me in. Like I was immediately like hooked on this like idea of racing 100 miles and what that would be like.
Yeah.
Um, so like, yeah, and like I had kind of a competitive background with like running cross country and track and field in middle school and high school. And so I guess like naturally the competition part of it, came, but like there was a certain fascination of like just covering the distance that was new to me. Um, So yeah, I mean, I don't know really how to explain it. I didn't have like grand plans or anything, but after high school, I was like really fascinated with the West and like the Rocky Mountains. And I grew up in Pennsylvania, like kind of a just a hilly rural area, but like, you know, not exactly a trail runner's paradise. So
Right.
I was like curious about what things were like out west, and yeah, a couple days after graduating high school, I took a one-way flight to Grand Teton National Park, and I spent the summer working as a housekeeper. Um, and would just like any day I had off, would go run in the mountains and stuff, and I thought it was awesome.
Was there anybody you were influenced by, like in that move out west? Were you looking at other ultra runners in the sport and saying, like, the way they did it, I want to give that a try?
Yeah, like some people with like an online presence at the time, like guys like Sage Canaday,
Yeah.
even Anton Kripicka, like these guys like living in Colorado. I thought Colorado was like so cool. Um, just because like, there wasn't exactly a ton of uh I don't know, like exposure to the sport in like 2013. There's definitely
Right.
some, but like those guys were probably pretty influential. And then kind of locally, there was this runner, Jeff Nelson, he had used to coach at the high school that I ran for. And once he had found out that I was like running on the trails, we kind of like linked up and we did some training together. But it was kind of funny because he was like twice my age or like more. He had a daughter in high school that was my age. And so like he was kind of like a first mentor and stuff who showed me the ropes a little bit, like what the sport was all about.
I want to ask one more question on the high school front. I think you mentioned, like, during that era, you were really interested in being a competitive runner, but you weren't really putting up the results that you were satisfied with. And so you kept going down the research rabbit hole, trying to figure out what it would take to get better. And that's also interesting to me because despite the negative feedback you were getting in the moment, you kept searching, you kept trying. And I think most people at that age, they don't have that like initial positive feedback on something. They look to something else to pursue. And is that persistence a strong suit of yours? Were you determined no matter what to make running like the main thing in your life?
Yeah, I guess so. Like I'm definitely a pretty persistent person, and the like the fact that running is kind of an individual pursuit, and it was kind of like you get in what you like, or you get out of it what you put into it, was really appealing to me. And like even before running, I was really into golf. Like my dad is a good golfer, and we played as I was a kid. And like I even took that to the extreme. Like my parents would drop me off like in the morning and I'd play all day. Like I'd play like I wouldn't just play like 18 holes of golf. I would play like 72 holes of golf. So I've always kind of been a little obsessive about like stuff like that, I guess. Or like I don't know. I guess I like to pick one thing and try to be like really good at it, or try to like, focus all of my energy into that one thing. And like once I found running, I had a little bit of like initial success where just the team that I was on, like immediately I was like one of the best runners on the team. And so
Hmm.
that helped. And then like after that, like I kind of, I guess I just figured like, why not? Like, why couldn't I be, one of the better kids in our region and one of the better kids in the state? And,
Yeah.
um, I never got too far with high school running. I ended up, I would say, one of the better runners in the region, but like never was a great runner even on the state level actually. So that's when I turned to ultra running.
I think you mentioned that probably the biggest part of the solution from an improvement standpoint was volume, just purely running more. And I know that we'll probably talk later in the conversation about your new relationship with Jason Koop, but is that still core to your philosophy? Are you still a big believer in, like, if you want to get better at this sport, if you want to maintain your standing in this sport, it's about like, putting in a bunch of time on feet?
Yeah, I mean for me it is. I think like there's definitely examples of runners who like don't have to run a crazy amount. Um, but I think like just like physiologically they're probably different than I am. Um, so yeah, kind of early on I was like in high school, you know, I was kind of looking for like some way to be like a better runner. And like eventually it just kind of dawned on me that like I think if you just run more, you know, you're gonna be better at running instead of trying to figure out like what like perfect blend of smoothie you can have for breakfast that's gonna like, you know, make you healthy and stuff. So yeah, like and then I tried it, like I started running more and like the results were crazy. Like I was like way better. Um Even just like a few months later. Like I probably had a not a great like junior year of cross country, and then I started running higher mileage just like on my own during the winter before track.
Mm.
It's like probably 2 or 3 months gone by, and like I was running like a minute faster in races, like by the spring, and then like so obviously like having some positive feedback, I like kept it up, and then like the next year it was like even more like I was improving even more. So yeah, volume's always worked for me. I think it still does. I've definitely like gotten carried away and done too much. So I think I've found a better balance with things. But yeah, it's still I just respond well to it for whatever reason.
This question's a little off topic, but I don't know why I'm reminded of it. Would you ever consider doing a road marathon, like at this stage of your career, or anything on the roads? Given that, for example, like Jim has dabbled in it a bit, and other folks in our scene take breaks from the trails for a bit to go see what they can do there. Does that interest you at all?
Not really. I don't think I'd be very good at it. Uh, in Flagstaff, there's a lot of really great road marathoners in town, and I've trained with some of them. And I probably have a pretty decent idea of like what I could run for a marathon
What
without
do you
ever
think?
having to do one.
Where do you think it's at right now? What do you think like high end you could do?
Like I think like best case scenario for me would be like 216. And
That's
like
awesome. OTQ.
yeah, I mean, but who knows? Like it could also be 220. Um,
Yeah.
it could be 222, but like I think if I put everything into it, like I could run like 216, and that doesn't really get me too fired up.
Maybe there has to be some element of mystery or unpredictability to what you're going after.
Yeah, or like, you know, it's not, I don't know. I guess once you've had some success in like the corner of the sport of ultra running, it's like, do I really want to like try really hard to just be like like mediocre, you know, in road running?
That's a great point.
Yeah. I don't
That's
know.
a great
There's
point.
not a huge payoff to it, I guess.
I've always wanted to know this. What is the story behind how you met Jim Walmsley?
I think the first time I met him was at Lake Sonoma in 2015. We both raced there. Um, I think I finished third, and he was like fifth after kind of going out pretty hard. Um, and then yeah, we just kind of like were chatting after the race and stuff. Obviously, I guess that was like when he was first getting into ultra running more, and we stayed in touch. At the time, I lived in Colorado Springs, and he had lived there previously when he attended the Air Force Academy. And I remember a couple times he had like passed through town, and we like linked up for a run. Um, and yeah, we just like stayed in touch. He told me that like him and a few younger guys in Flagstaff were training together, and like they were all racing pretty well. Um, and I was kind of looking for a new home, and I ended up in Flagstaff like a couple years after I had met him, like in 2017.
Is he a pretty persuasive guy? Is he like truly like a ringleader in that sense of the word?
Um, I don't know if he's that persuasive. I mean, he got me, I guess. Um, but like at the same time, it was I guess Flagstaff has a lot of good things going for it. You know, like you could
Yeah.
even if the other pieces weren't there, you'd kind of be making a good decision like living here as a runner.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I guess like that the group aspect was definitely something that he cared about and kind of wanted to pursue. So
Well, at the height of the scene, maybe it was 2018, 2019, give or take. How often were you guys like training together, for example? Like the year that you were all in on Western States, for example?
uh maybe 3 times a week. We
Oh
we
wow.
would all be, sometimes more. I mean, there's probably some weeks like I know for sure like there's been some weeks where I've run like every single day with Eric Sensman, like 7 days out of the week we've run together. Um, but like all getting together probably at its height, like 3 maybe 4 days a week. Um, but it depended a lot. If we were all training for the same race, like Western States, obviously it was a little easier. But as like people splintered and had different races and stuff, it became a little harder.
And looking back, what was that era like? Do you look back at those years in particular pretty fondly, like having that opportunity for the closest thing, in my opinion, we've ever had to a trail running team in the sport?
Yeah, it was pretty fun. Like, we were all like in our 20s. Um, just yeah, like what's not fun about it, like training in Flagstaff, Arizona. None of us had that much responsibility. We would meet up for a beer at least like once a week too. And like we had a pretty good community around us, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, it was fun. Drive to the Grand Canyon together, go for a long run. Like, I got to crew each other at races and stuff. That was always a good time. So yeah, I definitely look back fondly on it.
Where does it stand today? Given I think I heard the news that Jim is moving over to France, and I think Cody's in Mammoth. And is there still a semblance of the team? Is it not in its current form anymore? Like, where does it all stand?
Yeah, it's not like what it was really. I think the pandemic changed things a lot because um, it's crazy to think about, but like it was, 2020 when the pandemic started, we were pretty cautious even to like run with each other. Like
Yeah.
there was a few months there where it was just like even hanging out was kind of weird. So that just changed a lot. Like Cody moved, Jim's sounds like he's moving to France. And like, but I mean, I still hang out with like most of them pretty
Yeah.
frequently. I'm at Steven's house
Yeah.
right now, so um, yeah, we
Shout
still
out
get out
Steven.
for runs and like hang out and stuff, but maybe not as much as we used to.
Well, cool. No, I've always been curious. It was, I don't know, as a fan of the sport, it was a cool era
Hmm.
where, you guys were putting out content on the regular and training for the same races and like organizing around golden tickets in Western states. So no, it was just cool.
Yeah, I mean, part of that too was like Mike Hermsmeyer wasn't like kind of dedicated himself to the group, so like all the content
Yeah.
that you saw was from Mike.
Really?
Otherwise, it would have been like we were never any good at posting for ourselves. So like Mike definitely pushed things along
Yeah.
quite a ways. I guess for like us
Gotcha.
being accessible and stuff.
I do want to ask a couple questions on the training and career related front before we talk about canyons and Western. The first, yeah, I'm curious. I mean, the last, obviously, I'll say this with a preface. You're one of the best runners in the sport, period, still. Like, I put you on the Mount Rushmore with Jim Walmsley and Tim Tollefson and all these other great American male ultra runners. But the last couple of years, you had a string of a lot of DNFs, subpar races by your standard. I'm curious what you attribute that to and what you thought the limiting factors were and maybe what the biggest lessons have been.
Yeah, I think. I mean, short answer is it could probably all be explained away with like overtraining.
Okay.
And in 2020, that was kind of like the start of my woes. Was like about the time the pandemic happened. I also graduated college like in May of 2020, and like March or April was kind of when we first went into lockdown.
Yeah.
And like I just found myself with a lot more time on my hands, and like I've always trained a lot, but I like started. I would say like not necessarily any one week was so much bigger than what I had done in the past, but all of a sudden like 8 week training blocks were turning into like 3 or 4 month long training blocks, and
Mm.
like races were harder to come by. So I would just run a lot for months on end without like anything in sight, with
Yeah.
kind of a less structure than what I was used to. Um, so that was the big problem that I had in the last 2 years, just showing up to a lot of races, not feeling very good. It's a bad feeling to start an ultra tired, and that was kind of what happened a lot. And like I obviously had the expectations that like I still wanted to race well and stuff. So I was
Mm.
like going out hard and like trying to stay with the leaders and like always just be gassed by halfway. Um, so yeah, it was a lot of it. And that's not uncommon in the sport. I think like there's stories of guys
Yep.
who had a couple good races, got a sponsorship, quit their job, and then found themselves like overtrained, later that year or something. So I had to figure that out and kind of work through it. And, fingers crossed, I think I'm on the other side of it. Things have been a lot better this year. So yeah, hopefully I keep moving in that direction.
In addition to being a great runner, just from an observer standpoint, it seems like you're not afraid to take at bats either. Like if you have a bad race or even a stretch of bad races, like you're signing up for the next one almost immediately. It's not like you're feeling deterred by the performance. Is that pretty correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a little bit last year. I was getting sick of it. Like Western States was a big disappointment because I had trained like really hard. I thought I was in great shape.
Yeah.
And I mean, probably the problem was like I was like a month early, with my training. Or like the race was a month late. But I guess like I would see like glimpses of being in like great shape and training and stuff, so that would always keep me going. And like I've like definitely had some of my best training the last couple of years, and it's just not shown in races.
Yeah.
Um, and I like at times maybe started to wonder if I was ever gonna have a good race again. But like I don't know, like I would always come around like after taking some rest or something, and I'd be like, no, like I still got it. Um, so yeah, I guess like eventually after CCC last year, I dropped out at halfway. I took like a whole month off, and then I
Mm.
started working with Coop after
Yeah.
that. And so we've working with him has been a big help. We've kind of together gotten straightened out a bit.
I want to talk about that in just a second, but you said something interesting. You said that at the 2021 Western States, you were about a month early with your training, which is an interesting phrase. And just for listeners that might not understand like the physiology of that and, what goes into building a training block, what does it mean to be about a month early? And what do you see as like the perfect build in terms of the number of weeks leading up to a race like Western States?
Yeah, I guess you know physiologically, I don't really know what it is that like makes you overtrained, but like uh I guess like that race in particular, I'd started training like at the end of February. Like started training pretty hard at the end of February. And so by the time like April rolled around, I was in like really great shape. Like I probably could have
Okay.
ran Western States in April. And then like May came, and honestly, like May I was probably pushing it, but like I was still in great shape. But like still running even more. And then like by the end of May, early June, like little things just started to like unfold where like I was feeling pretty tired on my runs. Like I went from having like a few good runs a week to like no good runs a week where I was tired every day. And like,
Okay.
you expect to be tired when you're training hard for an ultra, but like there's a fine line between, what's productive and what's not. And then like even before the race, like this wasn't like a limiting factor, but like a small injury popped up. And like, it's just those things that are these little red flags that I think they're easy to ignore in the moment, but like once you look
Mm.
back, you're kind of like, oh, that was obvious. So yeah, I guess like the main point is like you can only be in good shape for so long. You just can't be in great shape, like the shape of your life, like all year, every year.
It's a fleeting
Yeah,
moment.
um, like you need that, and then you need like rest afterwards, and then you need to do it again. So I had just stretched myself a little thin in the months before.
Gotcha. Well, you mentioned the new relationship with Jason Koop, and I'm curious, what have been some of the biggest changes to your training since that started?
Yeah, I guess the main thing is like I would a lot of times before I worked with Coop, I had trained kind of at my like maximum capacity throughout the year. So like if I had a race coming up, like I would, ramp up and kind of train like as hard as I could train and then like run the
Yeah.
race and then like, um, you know, recover, do it again. Whereas with Coop, we've definitely had more of a long range plan that looks a lot further than just beyond like the next race. And so we kind of, from my perspective, building in a little bit more logical way where like, at the beginning of this year, I wasn't running a ton. I've done a lot more workouts with him than usual too. So we're doing a lot of intensity over the winter, not that many miles. And then like as we got closer to Canyon, started running like a little bit more, but even that, like I ran like 3 or 4 weeks that were fairly high volume, like compared to what I'm used to. And I guess it just seems like, okay, we have a big goal of Western States and like I feel like we have somewhere to go, like we haven't like tapped ourselves out completely before, the last training block arrives. So there's, I don't know,
Hmm.
in my mind there's like a next logical step. It's like, okay, the rest of the intensity goes away, the volume goes up a little bit more, and then, we race. So yeah, just more structure overall.
In your context, what does a lot of intensity look like in a given week in terms of workload?
Intensity, like I would almost never do workouts before. If I did, like
Really?
maybe, yeah, like maybe one every 2 weeks. But like, I guess intensity would come in the form of like, if I felt good and I was at the bottom of a climb, I would like run hard to the top.
Okay.
um, or like I would do some hard long runs on the dirt roads around here that you could maybe say were like steady state efforts, stuff like that. But then like with Coop, we did a lot at times. Like sometimes I was doing like 3 workouts a week. Um, and like
Wow. And a long run.
not always a long run.
Okay.
Yeah, like in the late fall, early winter, I wasn't really doing long runs so much. And
Okay.
then like even as we got more into like January, February, a lot of times he would like include a workout in the long run. So, and those were like pretty hard. So I would do like 4 times 10 minutes at the beginning of a workout or beginning of a long run, and that would take like an hour and a half. And then I'd have like 2.5 hours still to run. It's like not really a cool down, but to
Yeah,
finish
yeah,
the
yeah.
run.
Yep. Cool. Do you like being coached?
Uh, yeah, yes and no. Like I don't always want to do what Jason tells me to do. Um, but yes, like in the grand scheme of things, I like having somebody else involved with my training, and I like even just like being able to talk to somebody about some of this stuff where um, like the first race Jason and I had together was Black Canyon. I dropped out, and I was like, oh fuck, like I was like, I'm not over whatever I thought I was over. But then, like, in my head, I was like, no, like, you are. Like, I felt good at the start of this race. I just didn't feel like I was in shape to race 100K. Just to get on the phone with
Yeah.
him after and talk and be like, yeah, I thought the same thing. Like, I thought this was a little rushed, like, I kind of switched up the schedule on him a bit last minute for Black Canyon. And so just have a sounding board to be like, you know, some of my, like, your initial impressions that by yourself you would, like, second guess to have somebody with a
Yeah.
bunch of experience be like, no, I agree, like that sounds right.
Yeah. Well, switching gears a bit, I'm curious what prompted the switch from Hoka to Salomon because you have the new sponsor this year. You're running for the Salomon team, and I'm curious what prompted the switch, and yeah, what makes you attracted to that team, wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah, I've been with Toka for like 5 years, and they were like my first sponsor that I signed with, and um, like things were great with them. It was really fun to be a part of the brand for the time that I had been. I guess what I was kind of looking for most was like a little bit more like athlete support from the brand. I
Okay.
think it's hard to describe unless like you're an athlete like traveling around the world to these races, but like It's some things that seem little that like aren't so little. Like I remember going to UTMB for the first time last August, and like I had a travel budget with Hoka, and I was like pinching pennies, staying in this like kind of shitty apartment that was really loud, and like I had no one there to like help crew me or anything. Like I'm like sending
Mm,
texts to like people like,
mm.
hey, can you help crew? Uh, and like
Oh,
I'm in Chamonix, and like seeing some of the support from the other brands was crazy. Like
like
Adidas,
Adidas, for example.
I
Adidas.
remember because like Steven was there, and I'm friends with Steve, and they had like these really nice Airbnbs that they had rented for like a whole month that like the athletes did
Oh
not
yeah.
have to think about like covering at all. They had a personal like private chef all week, like cooking them
I think they had a
meals.
masseuse,
What's
right?
up?
I think they had like a
Yeah,
masseuse
like
too
a
or something.
masseuse, like they had like a media team following around, like giving them like, if you need a photo to post before the race, like I had to like bum a ride off of Sabrina Stanley and Avery Collins, like from Chamonix. I was like, can I get a ride with you guys? Like I don't have any way to get there. It's just like stuff like that where it's like, it makes a big difference when you're, like you
Huge.
don't want to, if you've been to UTMB and you know what it's like, I guess, and like you have the travel budget, you can kind of do it all on your own. But like you don't want to waste a career like figuring it out. Like you only have so many of these opportunities. Whereas like brand like Salomon, like they've been in the game for a long time. Like they, you know, as if you show up to a race as an athlete, like they provide all these support services. Like they have a physio with them, they have a media team, they have people to help crew you, they have a team manager that's been doing it for 15 years and like um, kind of knows his way around all these events. And then like even from a product standpoint, they're like anything you need. If they don't have it in line, like they have a program or they'll just make it for you. So like they're gonna make custom pieces of product like before Western states, like cooling stuff. So that's huge. Like that's things that like you can't really write into a contract, but as an athlete, they make a big difference.
It's wild that in the year 2022 in our sport, which is it's professionalizing pretty quickly, that any sponsored athlete should be responsible for logistics on race day or in the lead up. Like that's the last thing, in my opinion, you should have to think about. You should be focusing on how am I going to put together like this heroic effort on race day to do my best and to hopefully podium or win. Like it's just that's insane to
Yeah,
me.
I mean it. If you've been to a race, it's a little easier. Like Western states, I wouldn't necessarily say like I need a lot of help. You know, um,
Yeah.
but like if you've never been there before, it's not easy to figure it out the very first time you're going, and like you can't always afford to go over 2 weeks early, stuff like that. Like, um, yeah, having the logistics part of things kind of figured out by a brand is pretty important, I think.
Cool. Are you running full time right now for Solomon? Is this something that if you wanted to, at least it could be a full time thing?
Yeah, I'm running full time right now, and I have been, I guess, since I graduated college and in like May of 2020. So like the past couple years, that's kind of been what I do.
What's that lifestyle like? Because very few people in the sport do it. Like I'm guessing Jim might do it, Courtney
Yeah.
might do it, but not many athletes in the sport. So yeah, what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty cool lifestyle. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. I wake up, like my main priority for the day is like get in like a good training run. Um, I It can be a little boring at times for sure. Like there's not always a ton to do, but then like when you're traveling to races and stuff, there's not exactly like a lot of downtime. I would say those are kind of the busier times for an athlete. But like the
Yeah.
day to day, I mean, there's you get your training in. I usually train in the morning, come back to my house, have lunch, and usually have some sort of evening activity, like either going to the gym to lift or even just doing like some
Yeah.
like preventative stuff at my house, or yeah, I don't know. I don't really cross train, but like um, getting getting ready for like a big long day the next day. Say like long runs kind of take up a whole day usually, especially if you're like driving
Yeah.
somewhere. So I don't know. It kind of seems like 3 or 4 days a week are kind of busy, and then like the other days are not very busy. But that's not uncommon for like most people who just have a normal job. Like they have 2 days off each week. So I don't know.
Do you do you feel like if you did have competing responsibilities like another job, that it would be cutting into your ability to train well and to essentially give your best in the sport?
Uh, I don't know. Like I think it's doable. A lot of people in the sport do like have a job um and compete at a really high level. I know like for me, uh like when I was in school, I was I was still able to compete at a high level, but it was definitely, I don't know. It's just a little stressful at times. Like you got a lot on your plate. You got to be pretty
Yeah.
efficient time management, and like you definitely, I guess like when you're doing something else, you think that if I drop this, like I'll be better. And I think it's probably true, but then like, you know, I guess it can like bite you too. Like it did bite me a little bit. Like just having running on my plate. But yeah, I don't know. I think at this point, like there's examples of both. Like I don't think the sport is dominated by people who do it full time.
I know that you can't go into the specifics of contracts, but like when you're at your level of sponsorship, do you get access to, for example, coaching stipends? And if you want to work with a strength coach or a sports psych or any of these like miscellaneous extra things on the side, you can get those with the sponsor?
I would say you could probably get access to all of those things, and like I've had access to most of those things. Not
Okay.
necessarily. It's not always directly like through Salomon. Like they don't pay for everything. But like I I have a sponsorship with Carmichael Training Systems, so that like I represent Carmichael now, and Jason in exchange, like Jason is my coach. Um, and like I've done the same thing with like a gym in town where like I was working with a personal strength coach, and like in
Yeah.
exchange you give representation to that business. So
Cool.
it's not, and I mean there's like a level above me obviously, but like it's not like it's not like professional like ball sports like football or basketball where
Yeah.
like anything you need is at your fingertips. But like I don't know. It, I feel like I have like everything I need, I guess.
Well, I appreciate, the back and forth here because the sports business nerd in me gets really excited by this kind of stuff. And like, it wasn't so long ago that nobody was able to make a living out of this sport. And even the top athletes in the sport were just getting shoes in exchange for the brand relationship. So I like to think that we're at the start of something where maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, your situation is like the norm for elite athletes in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It certainly seems to be like heading in that direction, even since like I've been in the sport. Um, like 7 years ago, 2015, I had a pretty good year of running, and I didn't exactly have like sponsors like knocking down my door. So things have
Yeah.
changed a lot like just recently, and I'm kind of seems like we're continuing in that direction. So
One more question I have for you that I think will probably transition into canyons. I'm curious how you choose races year in and year out. Like what factors go into it? Um, we'll start there because I have a couple other questions based off that.
yeah, I mean, I guess my whole career, like with Hoka and Salomon, it's kind of a personal thing. It's like the athlete gets to choose their schedule, and then the brand kind of does things with the athlete like around those events if they want to or if they don't want to. But
Mm,
for me, like I try to pick like some of what I know are going to be the most kind of competitive races of the year. I typically prefer to race mostly in the US and then like occasionally in Europe. Like I don't like to do a lot of travel. And I guess I don't know. I'll usually start with like one half of the year at a time. I don't always have like a great plan for the whole year. So like the
Yeah.
second half of this year, I don't exactly have figured out, but like this year, it's like, okay, I want to do Western States. So I picked Black Canyon and then that didn't work out. And so I picked Canyons because they're golden ticket races. And then I'll race states and then I have some ideas, but I'll probably race again like later in the year in the fall or early winter.
Do you have any thoughts on specialization versus trying your hand at a bunch of different distances and terrains? Like at this point in your career, do you think I'm pretty good at this and I'm just going to go deep into that? Or I'm actually pretty curious and it doesn't matter if it's UTMB or it's Western States, like I'm just fascinated, so I'm going to go try them.
I mean, I think I'm like pretty specialized. I want to stick like mainly with ultra, but like I mean, I would put UTMB and Western States under the same umbrella as like, yeah, I mean,
Really?
like long ultra, like I guess 14 plus hour races, 10 plus hour races. I guess there is like a level of like difference between them, but for me, like I want to run UTMB someday too. And so I guess I would separate things based on like maybe like 8 hours and up is kind of like long
Okay.
ultra. And then like,
So terrain doesn't matter to you.
I mean, it doesn't matter like right now sitting on a couch, but like, yeah, as you're out there, yeah, it does. But like, I don't know. I guess I assume those things are like trainable. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Cool.
yeah, like I'm not, I'm not a, I don't see myself being too good at like the short trail races. I'll add in that like I do plan on participating in the Golden Trail Series this year because they have two races in the U.S., which makes it kind of appealing. But more than anything, just to like get away from the specialization of always training for long ultras and kind of like being forced to shift gears a little bit. But like I don't exactly expect myself to like go and do really well.
Mm. Maybe we'll finally get to canyons here. Like I said at the top of the conversation, I'm seriously impressed by what you did there. And just given the relative struggles you had in 2020 and 2021, and then I guess earlier this year at Black Canyon, I'm curious, what were you telling yourself leading into the race and how are you staying focused on, yeah, just the parts of your career that would make you confident to perform at the highest level in this event?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like, honestly, I was trying to not think about too much before the race because like I definitely had like doubts. And like I think that's the hardest part is like when you've had a bad streak, like it's hard to get out of that mentality of like, well, this one's gonna be bad too. So
Yeah.
like I definitely had some of those thoughts before the race, but I tried to just like let them pass and like not like let them take hold too much. And like I just tried to get to the start line. I was feeling good. Like I definitely knew I was in shape and I like felt fresh. I wasn't feeling overtrained. I was healthy. So like, that alone is a win. And then as the race, like as the gun went off and the race progressed, like, I wasn't exactly feeling great about things the first couple hours, but as soon as we started climbing up the Forest Hill, I really started getting some like positive feedback or I was feeling good. I was passing guys, I was like moving up through the field. And
Mm.
that's when I was like, I tried to really grab a hold of that and like ride it out and be like, yeah, like this is going to be a good race. Like I'm going to, I'm going to get a golden ticket today. Yeah.
I know you've mentioned in previous interviews that you tend to perform better when you're as close to the front of the pack or right there as possible. And was that where you were for the majority of the race? Like, were you up there competing and, at least within a couple minutes or miles of like David and Adam, for example, or where were you positioned for the most part?
Yeah, for the most part, I was at the front, like the first, 16 miles to the first like Kerbal aid station. I think it was driver's flat.
Yeah.
I was like basically right behind the leaders, maybe like came in like 30 seconds behind them and then like left. I think I left in second place, right behind David Sinclair. And then there's like this pretty fast, just like double track road down to the Rucky Chucky River crossing of the Western States Score, but obviously we don't cross it during the Canyons course.
Yeah.
And then like I got down there, I made a quick stop at some bathrooms down there, and so like that had put me. By the time I got out, I was like, I think I was around fifth or sixth, and like I could guess like a minute or two back behind like the leaders, and then like all the way up to Forest Hill, running along Cal Street, I was moving up into eventually third by the time I got to Forest Hill, and I was a couple minutes back of David and Adam, and like basically I just stayed there all day. And they'd put like a little bit more time on me at each, like every time I got an update, until like eventually David stopped putting. I think started catching David a bit towards the end. I think in the last like 10 or 15 miles, and then, but like Adam was also running away from David, so like his lead on me had about stayed the same, it sounded like. And then like
Okay.
by the finish, I think Adam was about 16 minutes up and David was maybe 5 or 6, something like that. So.
And how far back was Rod behind you ultimately?
It was like 30 minutes back. Yeah.
30 minutes. Okay. So you were sort of in like a no man's land third place finish. Like you securely had a golden ticket. Was that how did you feel like you had it basically for the last like 5 or 10 miles? Like you just had it in the bag?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of figured that like knowing who was behind us, and then I kept getting updates that we were like well under course record pace. I was like, I don't foresee like any of these people behind us also being under course record pace. And I also felt like pretty good. So I was like, I guess if I do get caught, like I still have some fight in me. But that didn't seem likely. And so like, I don't know, it was kind of like ideal situation for me. Like I was in third. I wasn't like giving up. Like I wasn't getting dropped like super hard by the guys in front of me in terms of like, it wasn't like every time I showed up to an aid station, there were like 5 more minutes ahead. Like it was pretty steady. And so that felt good. I was like, I know I'm moving well. Like I feel good. If I just keep doing this, like I'm going to get a golden ticket. And yeah, honestly, it was like one of the smoother races I've had. I think, being a little bit back from David and Adam, basically I got spared the jostle for first place, and just kind of cruised in third and like got the job done with getting a golden ticket, and moving on and focusing on states.
You said one of the smoothest races you've ever had. Were there any points where you went through a patch where you're like, oh, this is going to be like a race from earlier this year or 2021, or was it truly like just well executed, body was obeying and you were moving?
I mean, if I had any like doubts, they probably came in the first like 16 miles, just because it's really there's not much climbing in that part, and it was pretty fast. Just heading into the race, I had done this Salomon camp in Cape Verde, which are these pretty mountainous islands, and we had done a lot of slow training on the islands. Before I went to the trip, I had done some faster training, but I guess the most recent training I had in my legs was this kind of slower training where like we were doing a lot of miles and a lot of vert, and it just wasn't fast. And so that was kind of where my strength laid more that day, or where I was more comfortable. At least I was more comfortable on some of the slower kind of, uphills and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. As soon as I started climbing up to Forest Hill, I was pretty sure that it was going to go well from there on. I did have some low patches and stuff, but nothing crazy.
Maybe we'll transition to Western states here. And I got to ask this question first. So back in 2019, you ran, I think it was 14:26. So the second fastest time ever on the course. Unfortunately, the fastest time ever was the exact same year. I'm curious with that performance, looking back, do you feel like you got the absolute most out of yourself that day? Or do you think, well, when I actually analyze things, maybe there was still some more in the tank and could have shaved some further time off? Like, I guess I'm asking that because I'm wondering, do you think that there's time to shave in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's ultras are a little difficult because there's like absolutely things in 2019 that like did not go very smoothly. Like the first 30 miles, I was having some pretty serious like stomach issues. I like threw up before I ever got into like Robinson Flat. And like I think some of that might have been pre-race nerves, and I'd had like a poor nutrition plan for the early part of the race where I kind of had like a hot weather nutrition plan, drinking a lot of my calories in my bottles, and it's just not hot
Mm-hmm.
the first 30 miles, so that leads to be a bit of a problem. Anyway, I got things sorted out eventually and started feeling really good. I had a great like middle 50 miles. Like I don't know if I'll ever run the 50 miles of Western States, like from Robinson Flat to like Rocky Chucky any faster, or to Green Gate any faster. And then like the last 20, I was I was starting to bonk. I bonked pretty hard right after Green Gate, and then like kind of rallied. But like previously, it was like chasing down Jim. I was like still thinking like maybe I might still catch him. And then like immediately after Green Gate, it was like I was like eating three jails in a row. Just like I was like, you need to like focus on yourself right now and forget about chasing because you still have 20 miles left. Um, but like, I mean, I think I can run faster. I was also only 24 when I did it, so you'd hope that like a few years older, you'd be better at running. But you know, it's I guess it's easy to think that like of course you'll get better, like of course you'll run faster, but it may never happen again. So who knows? But yeah, I'd like to think there's more there.
Do you think that 13:59 is possible on that course anytime soon?
Probably. Like the weather would have to be right. Um, Even like you take the year that we had in 2019, the weather was really good, but there was snow in the high country. It's just like you get a
Yeah.
day when there's no snow and the weather's also really good, um, and the right competition. Uh, it's probably possible. Like, yeah, it's hard to imagine somebody running like 13:30, I guess. Like, I guess if somebody's going to run under 14 hours, it's going to be like just barely, it's going to be 13:50 something. Uh, but yeah, it's probably there. Um, I don't know who will do it.
Well, it's crazy because I was just watching Unbreakable last night. I probably watch that movie once every 2 or 3 years. And, Jeff Rose runs 15:07 that year. I think Anton runs 15:13. And that broke the internet that year. Everyone's like, that's amazing. So, and then, of course, Tim Olson does his thing a couple years later, and you and Jim a couple years after that. So it's just interesting to think about. What other lessons are you taking into this race just from like your veteran experience at Western in previous years?
Yeah, I guess like for now, I'm just focusing on kind of realizing that I don't have to have like the greatest like training of my life in like the next 8 weeks, and that like good enough is probably good enough. Um, so I know I'm in good shape. Like I just had a good race at Canyon, so I don't need to go prove much else to myself between now and states. But yeah, just get in some heat training, get in some more volume. But the main thing is I really want to show up feeling fresh and healthy. And like if I do that, then I know I have a really good chance of having a good day. But as far as like race tactics and stuff are concerned, like um, I don't know. I don't think there's like that many secrets to Western States anymore. I feel like everybody kind of knows how to do it. You just got to be ready to run downhill and handle the heat, and like probably not run crazy hard like the first 20 miles or so. So uh, Canyons was encouraging because I finished and like felt pretty good. Like I didn't want to run more afterwards, but if I had to, somebody put a gun to my head, I probably could have. So that's nice to just have like a good solid race and not be absolutely trashed after. Like I've definitely finished Lake Sonoma before and got a golden ticket and just like wondered how I was going to run another 50 miles. But I guess my current frame of mind is it seems doable.
As a competitor, as a professional in the sport, is it more important for you to put yourself in a position to win the race this year or to get a PR or to set a CR on the course? What's more
Definitely to
interesting to you?
win. Like I've never been somebody
Okay.
who's chased course records. A lot of times, the times when I've like, I don't know if I own any course records, but I have like a lot of like second fastest times, like things like that. Um, they're just a result of like competing with people in the race. And so, uh, I think the competitions this year where like it could maybe require me to run a personal best on the course, but it also is like really weather dependent. So um, I don't know. I would expect to like run under 15 hours, kind of no matter what the weather. But beyond that, I don't have too many time expectations of like, I guess whatever it takes to win is what I would hope I could do.
Cool. Couple rapid fire questions here before we close out. The first one, if we teleported to the year 2030 and we looked back at your body of work from the past decade, what would your resume in this sport look like from like 2022 onward?
I guess like just some wins and like podiums at some of the bigger races in the sport. Like for me, like the important races are like Western States, UTMB. Um, Looking beyond that, like some of the like Trans Gran Canaria, Madeira Island, Ultra Trail Cape Town, Templier, um, just like I don't know, some of the more well known like big races in the sport where like you're getting the biggest like most competitive fields every year, or what I kind of want to focus on moving forward, and that probably means like moving more into a European schedule in the future, but first things first is getting Western States taken care of. So we'll start there.
Are you in Flagstaff for all of those years as well, or are you changing home
I don't really
base?
know. I'm pretty open to like moving, but I really like Flagstaff. Like in the last couple of years, I've definitely thought a lot about like where else I'd want to live, and I've taken time to kind of research other areas, and right now Flagstaff's just hard to beat. Like we have really good weather year round. We have access to all types of terrain. Like we can run year round if we want. We have skiing available. We have the Grand Canyon. All my friends are here. So I don't know. For now, it's Flag, but I could be I could be persuaded to move somewhere else if it was better. But I don't see too many better options at the moment.
Cool. Is there anything that you used to believe strongly earlier in your endurance sports career that you have since changed your mind about? And if so, why?
Yeah, probably like that I need to be in like the greatest shape of my life every time I step up to a start line to be successful. Um, I used to think that like I had to outdo like the previous training I had done before, like whatever race I had done before, like I need to train harder than I did for that race. And if I do that, then I'll run better. And I've just realized that, I could train at 70% of, the most I've ever trained before and have like a better race than I've ever had before. So yeah, it's not always doing more isn't always the most important thing, but like, just being fit and like motivated and healthy is key.
Last question. If you could put a message on a billboard for all to see, what would it say and why?
I don't know, don't smoke cigarettes or something. Something that like everybody you know, could like benefit from.
Well, man, I really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about more than just canyons and Western, and to look back at your history in the sport and your professional career. And we'll make sure to link to all your socials in the show notes, and we'll be looking forward to Western States. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience
No,
with
I don't
before we
think so,
go?
Finn. Yeah, it was a good chat. Thanks for having me on.